Get off your ash. That's right, you heard me. Confronting what happened to us in the past in order to understand who we are in the present so we can be who we want to be in the future. It's time to stop allowing what happened to you yesterday to continue affecting what you do and who you are today. This podcast is going to challenge you and push you outside of your comfort zone. So, if you're ready to get off your ash, let's go. Hey, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me once again for another edition of the podcast, Get Off Your Ash. And today I'm going to continue my experiment of not being the only person talking for the whole show. And I've had guests in the past, and it's been really cool. And today I'm going to kind of push the experiment a little bit. My guest today, actually, we've known each other for a long time, but he hasn't read the book. I haven't even sent it to him just yet, but he agreed to be on the show, which I'm really thankful for. So as I talk to him about, dealing with your past and taking risks and trying new things, I'm eager to kind of find out like how that lines up with my own personal experience and what I wrote about in the book. So it should be I don't know, it should be fun, but it should be interesting at the same time. So without any further ado, let me introduce my guest all the way from Montreal, Quebec. Here he is, Jess Cantelon. All right, here he is. I told you we were going to have Jess Cantelon on the show, and look, that's him.
Hey.
Here he is. How you doing, bud?
Hey, good. How are you? So glad to be here, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. Now, you guys are just outside Montreal right now?
Yeah, we are just outside Montreal, and we love La Belle Provence. It's a really special place to be, and it's great for me to to have access to an airport and a lot of great connections out here. So yeah, we're here and we're loving it.
Okay, man. Well, listen, before we get too deep into the conversation, I mean, I know you, but there may be some people who are listening or watching the podcast today saying, Cantelon, I think I know that name, but I don't know if I know Jess. So Tell me a little bit about Jess Cantelon.
Right on. Yeah, well, I'm famously known as the son of Jim and Kathy Cantelon.
Right.
Son of Jim, son of Homer, son of Howard. And we have a few generations of pastors, and my mom and dad were invited by the Israeli government to plant a church in Israel in the 80s, and I was there with them. So I had the added bonus of having grown up in Israel and learning the language. And then I've since moved back, had my own little family.
Hang on, before you just skipped over.
Yeah, I just jumped right in. I was just giving a brief overview.
No, man, you missed something big, because your mom and dad were part of planning a church that has become, something super, not just successful, but really powerful and well known around the world. So a little bit about the church in Jerusalem.
Oh yeah, so my parents were bringing young adults over from Canada, from the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, to work on the kibbutzes in Israel, just practically bless Israel. And the government said, Jim, we love this program, but we want you to live in Israel to do it. And when you come, we want you to start a church. And so we moved there.
Nuts. The government asked your dad to start a church that talks about Jesus.
Yeah, well, it's an international congregation, and tourism is pretty key for Israel, and they like my dad, so it was a great connection, and we were, it was a season, I guess, of favor, and it still is a season of favor of God. And my parents invited Wayne and Ann Hilsden to join them, and after about 7 years, my dad decided to pass it on to his associate, who became lead, and he was there for about 25, 30 years. And then he passed it on again. So it's I had the opportunity to go back there with my family and minister, and it was quite a thing to do that, and just exciting.
Well, and that's where we met. We met in Israel.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I said it in the intro that you're an unusual guest in the sense that I think you're the first guy who I haven't had a chance to send the book to yet. So the premise of the book. You laughed at the title like everybody else does.
That's great.
But even though you haven't read it, you're like the living embodiment of what the book talks about, is that like it's okay to get outside of your comfort zone and try something that you don't really know how it's going to turn out, but you just know that you have to try it, and the risk is totally worth the reward. Because you guys went to Israel. There's no guarantee, but you really felt that you were supposed to go, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've gone to Israel, so that's to work in a foreign culture and to even though I was going back to a place where I grew up, I was never there as an adult, never there caring for a child and being a partner to a wife. It was a difficult and a big deal decision, to do that. And it was my first
Imagine.
time working in a church, really, and it was a really great chapter. I mean, so we've done that. We've church planted. We've done a few other things that have required, sort of big risk. But the one thing that really sort of, if I had to say there was one thing.
Yeah, that's the question. What's one thing that
well,
that you have done that is just so out of the box or exciting or risky or rewarding, whatever? Go. What is it, man?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the one thing, because think about this, is it wasn't flashy at all. Really, my wife and I were walking. We were ministering in the beaches area of Toronto. I was a little youth pastor down in Toronto, and we were taking a walk from the lake up towards Queen Street. If you know Toronto at all, it's next to the main street, right close to the beach. And Erica said, "Hey, Jess, so what are we going to do with our life?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think we'll just be available to God." And
Okay.
and she looked at me and said, "Okay." She grabbed my hand and we literally stepped off a curb. The riskiest thing I've ever done was stepping off a curb. And there, we didn't know. I mean, we just sort of fell into it foolishly, but it was as if we cut a covenant with the Lord, and he took it very seriously. And ever since then, he said, "Very well, we made this arrangement, Jess. You said, you and Erica agreed,
right,
you're going to be available to me. And therefore, I'm going to move you to Israel. I'm going to move you to the Anglican Church. I'm going to move you to Toronto, back to Toronto. I'm going to move you to Quebec. I'm going to move you to church plant." And every season is required risk. Every day requires risk. But that was the moment. That was the moment of greatest risk, was stepping off a curb. Now, it doesn't seem like a scary thing, but it was. I think had we known, we may not have stepped off that curb.
Yeah, that's why we're only allowed to see in part sometimes, because if we could see the whole thing, we'd be too scared to ever try or do anything, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
See, we had different experiences, but the outcome was kind of the same because, I was on staff at a big church. I was at Huntley Street hosting that and everything. I had everything that I wanted. All the years I'd worked for and gotten these great positions. And then I didn't step off a curb, but I said, "God, whatever you called me to next, please, it's got to be something that I can't do without you."
Yeah.
It can't be something so easy that I could do it. And then I'm not 100% sure if you're the one who's in it. And so for me, going to Liberia, doing what we're doing now, is definitely something I can't do without God. When you guys stepped out to go to live and serve in Jerusalem, did you feel like that was, I don't know, was that part of stepping off the curb and going, "All right, let's see what happens"?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the first step, right? That was the first step of stepping off the curb, was to say yes to Israel. A lot of, I'm sure that your Liberia thing came about in different ways. And, we started connecting the dots and hearing the voice of God saying, I want you to go to Israel, and saying yes to that. I mean, it's harder to imagine when you're young. You don't realize all the ramifications of moving away from family and what that's going to do. And when you leave a city, a place where you've grown up, that place still moves on, and you leave, and when you come back, it's there's relationships aren't what they were, and it's there's an impact to making a decision like that. When we arrived in Israel, it was basically 2 weeks before Arafat died, and
wow.
We were sitting in this apartment watching all the action on CNN, and I turned to Erica. I said, that's happening 20 kilometers up the road. And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, this is where we are." And so it was interesting. So we arrived there during an intifada, and intifada ended with Arafat's death. And we were up for adventure, and we had one little child, I was at the point where
Yeah.
we took him wherever we went. He came with us, and but then every time you make a decision like having a baby in Israel and taking a risk to
Mm.
do worship nights and nightclubs, all these things, are risks
Yeah.
that wouldn't have happened without that first risk, which didn't feel like a risk at all, really. It was just we're just going to step off a
See,
curb.
I like that. I love what you said. It didn't even feel like a risk,
Yeah.
but it was a risk, and a lot of people, when they come on my tours to Israel, they're like, oh, I could just live here. I said, no, you can live in a hotel where they make you breakfast and dinner and they make your bed and change your sheets. That's different. I mean, going there to live, that really is getting off your ash. That is willing to say, it's comfortable here. I know it. I know the healthcare system. I know the language. I know the culture. This, maybe I'm not going to be whatever, but at least I know where I am. I'm sitting here and I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
And then getting off of that and leaving behind what's comfortable and said, I'm going to exchange it for the unknown. I'm going to exchange it for uncertainty, my safety, my health, all of that. But what if he hadn't done that? Like, where's the path from there if he hadn't done that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that it's just like you. I don't want to look back in my life and say that I somehow was responsible for the success at all. I want to look back and
Mm,
say I was obedient to the Lord, and I was able to follow him where he called me. Now, the Lord is sovereign, and so he calls some of us to be dentists and some of us to ministers in
mhm,
different contexts. All of us are called to minister. Some of us are called to minister in lawyers' offices and as mailmen, and so on. Some of
mhm.
us are called to work in churches. Some of us are called to work overseas. And had we not made that decision, I don't know. I think maybe the Lord would have brought another opportunity for me to say yes to him. But
Yeah.
it's we kind of fell into it from moment to moment, where we stepped off the curb. We said yes to the Lord then, and
Mhm,
and then we found ourselves. We were working sort of two jobs at the same time, and both of them came to an end at the same
mhm.
time. We just bought our first house, and we thought, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And it was just at the right moment, as it always is,
Mhm,
that the Lord gave us an opportunity to go to Israel. And I think that I
mhm.
was uh, far too um, unaware. Like for
Yeah.
Erica, for her, it was the bigger move, right? Because she spent her life,
Always. Yeah.
living in Canada, and I had already had that. Not only the international exposure, but I had Israel exposure. I was going
Mhm,
back to
mhm,
my school friends as a kid, and there were certain things I was connecting to.
mhm.
Um, but I mean, had we not done it, I would say that I think the Lord would persist and keep on knocking at our door and say, continue on.
Yeah.
I do not want to imagine a world uh,
Mm,
where I say no to God.
yeah.
And in my case,
Yeah,
it
but a
would
lot of
be,
people do, though, right, Jess? A lot of people do say no because it's uncomfortable sometimes to say yes because you don't have all your ducks in a row and all your Excel sheets in order. Not everybody says yes.
yeah, yeah, and that's and I can understand that. I mean, it's I've had times where I've said I don't think the Lord's going to show up, the Lord's not going to provide, and so on. But I think that
Mm,
because we made an agreement with Him early on in life, He took that way more seriously than we did, and He was faithful, to us, despite our ups and
mhm.
downs, and our seasons of taking things into our own hands. I'll tell you a funny story. I
Yeah.
was
Okay.
we were trying to we were in Israel, and we didn't have a car. And you don't need a car when you're living in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You don't really need a car. You can get around pretty much anywhere. But
Mhm.
our family was growing, and we needed a car, and so we spent a solid month looking for cars, trying to figure out a way to do it through an NGO, through the churches. Somehow
Mhm.
we needed to get a car. And cars there's 100% tax on cars in Israel because they're funding a full-time military. So it's not cheap. It's one car for the price of two. And so we just didn't have a car. And so finally, after a month of trying in our own strength to get a car, I said to Eric, I said, maybe we should pray about it. And she said, yeah, maybe we should. So we had a quick 20-second prayer. Lord, we need a car. Amen. And you know what happened? We that night after leading worship, I was approached by one of our young adults who said, Jess, do you need a car? I said, yeah. Why do you ask? She said, well, I just got a car given to me by my work, so I have two cars now. And I prayed to the Lord. I said, Lord, who should I give this car to? What should I do with it? And I heard him say, give it to Jess and Erica.
Wow.
So I mean,
this prayer thing, has anybody else discovered this?
Yeah, it was insane. It was just amazing. So, look, we've had lots of times where we have said no, where we have doubted, where we've said, God, you're not going to show up, where we've tried to do things in our own strength. Even when we pray, it's not flowery or full of faith. Really, we're just asking God to help us. And he shows up time and time again. He has shown up. And, so I all that to say is I understand if people say no to the Lord, but I also understand that he's more faithful than we are, and eventually he'll keep on softening your heart, and hopefully he'll say yes.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to ask you for a specific, but like I've been very honest about my failures in the past, because I'm more than willing to try something and fail spectacularly with fireworks, because at least if I try something and I say, oh, I'm awful at that, I'm never going to do that again. Without giving specifics, have you ever launched out or tried something, gotten off that ash, did something, and then went, oh boy, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go?
Yeah, I think so. I think pretty much in everything I do, there's lots of failure. My dad told me the very same thing you just said. He said, look, Jess, if you fail big, and make a big mess of things. And because if you don't try, if you spend your life being risk averse, then you're not going to accomplish anything. Our kids are, I had this moment when my kids were young. My kids right now are, some of the best snowboarders in Canada, and they're competing, they're on the tour and all that. But before they were these snowboarders, they were just kids, little kids. And there was this big 75-foot pine in our backyard, and they couldn't reach the bottom branch. And they asked me if I could help them up to the bottom branch. And I had this decision before me. Either I'm going to let them climb up that tree and I'll help them up, or I'm not going to help them up. And if I don't help them up, then they won't learn the beauty of taking risks. So basically, I saw it like this. If I help them up, they could change the world. If I don't help them up, they'll never change the world. Because you have to take risks. You have to say, I'm willing to give it a shot. And for sure. I mean, I have definitely had moments of failure where I've stepped out to try things that haven't been a fit, where I have not been good, and I'd see it more like this, that the Lord, I think if you feel like you're at least being faithful to what God is leading you to do, that he uses that to train you. To train you for what he has next. And I believe that, you in your life, Joe, you were trained and fashioned for Liberia. I mean, this Liberia is the thing you're doing. And there will be other things that you do in this life, and there'll be other things that you do in the life to come. And and this, what we're going through right now is training for that.
Yeah. Well, the way I put it in the book is, our life is like, it's like a recipe. And when you eat something, you don't realize how much has gone into that, like all the ingredients have gone into that to give it that flavor and that taste. So who Jess is today, who Joe is today, it's a result of every experience, right? The good stuff, the bad stuff, the victories, the failures, the joy, the sadness. But we wouldn't be who we are
Yeah.
without those experiences,
Right.
So well, first of all, thanks for being vulnerable. I know, not everybody can do that, and it was kind of on the spot. So thanks for saying yes to that.
Yeah.
But um, if there's somebody out there who's listening to this, they might be on a bus or on a train somewhere, have their headphones in, listening to this podcast. They just kind of stumbled on because they were going through a rough time. And so they're just searching podcasts for encouragement or for risk and all that kind of stuff. Or they're same on YouTube, they're watching this on there and they're doing the same search and they land on this interview. And now it comes to the end. And so here's these two guys they've never heard of, they've never seen, but they're talking about, risking and, failure and successes. If somebody's thinking about trying something that they really have wanted to do, or they really have a sense, I think I'm supposed to do this, but I'm afraid because, oh, my mom's going to judge me, or my husband or wife is going to, think I'm crazy to do this. What would you say to somebody who is considering, getting off that ash, taking that risk, but there's fear or insecurity holding them back? What would you say based on how you've made decisions in your life, Jess?
Well, yeah, I would, ultimately the you want to go for things, you want to send it, you want to, my kids jump off these massive jumps that and they fly 100 feet, and you just don't want to look, because that if they make a mistake, it's a broken body. And you get to this decision, it's really at the beginning where you have to just decide, I'm going to do this. And because if you go too slowly, you're definitely going to crash. If you balk at the last second, you're also getting in trouble. You just have to point it and send it. In terms of, I can talk about it from a faith perspective, at least from my perspective, that when I make decisions, it's my wife and I always make decisions together. We always have to so if one of you is feeling the need to send it and the other's not, you got to trust that the Lord will speak to you both, so that you're in it together. Otherwise, it's not going to be a healthy situation. I always, if I get the hunch that it could be the Lord, we pray about it, we talk about it together. If we both come to a yes, then we step out and we go for it. So if you're listening today, there should be some filters through which you understand your calling. Not everyone's going to understand it. I mean, if you're married, you and your spouse should go together and do what you're doing together. But besides that, you really are responsible to the Lord. You're responsible to one another and to your family. And if you have this hunch, this feeling like you're being pushed in a direction that might be uncomfortable, when I look back on the few risks I've taken in my life, I have seen the fingerprint of God. I have seen his faithfulness. I see that he has always provided exactly what we need exactly when we needed it, and he has never let us down. And that's amazing. So you're not going alone when you go with God. You're not going. You're really just helping him out. It's like you're just one of God's water boys. God says, this place needs water. We need you to bring water. There's nothing fancy. You're not all that special. You're just a water boy. You're just bringing water, and he will provide you the water. He'll provide you, everything you need to get the water from point A to point B. And that's pretty much all it takes, is to say a step off the curb. It's just simply say, okay, I will do it. I don't know how it's going to end up. I had no idea when we did that prayer on Queen Street that it would end up the way it ended up. I had no plans of going to Israel. We had no idea what we were doing with our life. It was a genuine question. What are we going to do? And that one little step of saying yes to God worked its way through our story. And so I would say go
I'm
for
glad
it.
you said yes.
I would say go for it. Say yes. Don't be afraid. But so long as you're doing it, as the Lord leads you, then it's really it's on him. The success or the failure is on him. I'll to finish with one little story. My great grandfather it was a set of four. So there were four brothers, and they were in the steam threshing business. And in 1913, they went to one of the brothers was in Winnipeg on a business trip, and he they weren't believers at all. So he was drunk at the bar, went back to his hotel room, and this was 1 year after they started putting Gideon's Bibles in hotels.
Oh, okay.
And he opens up the Gideon Bible, and it opens up to Isaiah 53. Reads it, encounters God, and goes back and leads his three brothers to the Lord.
Wow.
And then all those four brothers, they all ended up, going from businessmen to becoming church planters. And my great grandfather ended up church planting in a little town in Saskatchewan called Ceylon, Saskatchewan. And he led, meetings in his town and other towns around, and basically left after 2 years feeling like he had failed. No one really came to know the Lord except for one kid.
Okay.
That one kid ended up being John Wesley White, the sermon writer for Billy Graham. So, and that's an out of this world sort of story. But the reality is that sometimes you might feel like you failed, but if you've been obedient to what you feel the Lord has led you to do,
that's good.
It's really the success or the failures on him, So I think that all you're called to do is to faithfully say yes.
Dude, I love that. I mean, that really shows that it's more important to obey, even if you don't have, a detailed, job description and, a to-do list of, but just say, Lord, I'm really feeling this. I'm going to step out and I'm going to do it. And we never know the effects of our actions. Sometimes they're negative, but most of the times they're good. So it sounds like you and your wife, you've learned to say yes and to get off your ash, right?
Oh yeah, we've gone off our ash several times. And every time the Lord is faithful. So that doesn't mean it's been easy, but it does mean that the Lord has been faithful.
Listen, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? People say, oh, Jess, you pastored in Jerusalem. Oh, Joe, you've traveled this and done that. Well, we didn't do it by sitting at home, playing Xbox. We had to say yes. We had to take a chance and, be willing to fail and be embarrassed publicly, because we've both done very public things. But at the end of the day, I don't know who I would be if I hadn't said yes to all of these amazing adventures. I wouldn't have met you.
That's
sitting
it.
in your home, having a meal together in Jerusalem, dude. That's when it started.
Yeah. Great adventures and always, lots of fun. And I'm convinced that the Lord wants you to do what makes you tick. If you love doing, adventures, you're not going to be living a life of you have no adventure. He's going to call you into adventure. He's going to call you to do things that make you tick, that make you excited, that make you want to wake up every morning happy to do what you're doing.
Right on, man. Well, Jess, thank you so much, brother, for being open and just sharing your heart. And I'm hoping that anybody who's been watching this, who's been listening to this today, these two, I'm going to say it, these two nobodies, these two guys from Canada who have said yes to God. And, like you said, we're just the water boys, we've just been able to go. And I'm hoping that anybody who's listened or watched this today, who's been kind of on that fence, they have their foot on their curb and they're like, do I step off, and they're looking at that pile of ash going, oh, there's money there, there's comfort, there's familiarity, that they would just, have that holy boldness today. So, you know what, I'm going to say yes to God, and I'm going to trust him. I'm going to jump. And like you said, those snowboarders, they got a decision to make right at the top of that hill.
Yep.
They can't cop out halfway. They got to go, right? Go big or go home. That's the only way.
That's it. Yeah. They have to, their life is on the line if they don't. And Okay. They could not start at all. They could, like you said, they could stay on their ash, but they jump off and they say yes. So,
well, like I said, I'm so glad you said yes, and thanks for being on with me today, Jess. And I know, without any shadow of a doubt, there's people who are being blessed by this today. People who've been kind of teetering, didn't know which way to go, one way or the other. And hopefully something that we said today was going to push them over that edge in a good way, and they're going to launch out and try something new and exciting. So
Awesome.
thanks so much, buddy. And I look forward to the time when we can, have a coffee again in person. All right.
That'd be great. In Israel, we'll do that. It'll be great.
All right.
Or Liberia.
Well, the coffee probably is a little bit better in Israel.
It is.
Maybe at Aroma in Tel Aviv on Gordon Beach. Okay.
Yeah, right on. Let's do it.
All right. We'll
make it Joe.
Happen. Thanks, buddy. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I'll never forget meeting Jess for the first time in Jerusalem. I don't even know how many years ago. It's got to be probably, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. They were a young married couple with one kid. And I remember thinking, wow, I mean, look, they're here. They're in Israel. People talking about taking risks. They talk about doing stuff, but they've actually done it. I didn't know it all that time ago, but they got off their ash. They left the comfort. They left the security. It didn't matter what people thought about them. What are you doing? You can stay here and make a life for yourself. But they decided to say yes to God. They decided to say yes to that genuine, feeling they had in their hearts. And so I'm hoping that you've been encouraged today as you've watched or as you've listened along. And, the goal is to help you to, get off your ash. It's not just a fun thing to say. It's a mantra. It's a motto of my life. May I always be willing to be uncomfortable. May I never get to a place where, oh, this is so good. This is so secure. I finally got my little nest egg. I got it all set up and I'm never going to change. Man, may I never get to that point. May I always be willing to say yes, to launch out, to fail, to succeed, to whatever it is, but to live a life with no regrets. And then when I get to the end of my days, I might look back and say, oh man, remember that crazy harebrained idea we had to do A, B, or C, with a smile on my face, and the failure in my memory, I think I can look back on that as a good thing. And so I'm hoping today that you've been encouraged to say yes to that dream, that itching, that nudge that you have felt in your heart, that you'll be willing to say, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And, for some of us, that pile of ash, it's filled with so much insecurity because, if people knew what happened to me, or if people knew what I had done, and, the failures that I've had to go through and all the negative things I've had to go through and whatever, what are they going to say? Me, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And if we spend all of our time worrying about what people think about us and what they're going to say, listen, they're going to talk anyways, whether you do it or not, they're going to talk. So do it, try it, fail, succeed, shine, whatever it is. Just, get to that place where doing that thing becomes more important than caring what other people are going to say or think about you. So that's the message of the podcast in general. But today is here are these two guys from Canada who ended up working in different parts of the world and had such a great experience. And Jess or I, we're never going to fully really understand the effects and the fruits of our work. Maybe it's, not in this lifetime, but, hopefully on the other side, we're going to find out, hey, when you said yes to that, Jess, when you went to Jerusalem and you were doing worship in those clubs, look at all these people who are here today because of you. Joe, because you said yes and you went to Liberia, you went to Africa and you started doing what you did. Look at all these people. They're here because of you. My prayer is that you would have that same experience, that you would say yes to that thing that you sense you're supposed to do, that you would do it. You would give it everything you got, man. Just go for it and enjoy it. Enjoy every moment. And hopefully you'll see some of the fruit here on this side, but if not, don't worry. We don't know the effect that our decisions can have in and on the lives of other people. And so I want to encourage you to get off that pile of ash, to get over that thing that's been holding you back. Don't be the boat, sorry, that's tethered to that dock. You're going to rev your engine and you're going to blow everything out because you're never going to be able to go unless you can unhook from that negativity, unhook from those thoughts, from those words that people spoke over you when you were younger. Get to the place where you say, I'm just going to go out there, untether, pull up that anchor and go. Get out there and do your thing. All right. I could keep saying the same thing over and over again, 20 different ways, but I'm going to sign off. I'm going to say thank you so much for listening, for watching. And in the outro here, I'm going to tell you how you can get a copy of Get Off Your Ash. And if you say, oh man, we love this at our men's group, we love this at our church or at our event, just find out through the outro. You're going to get the information to the website on how you can get to me. And I would love to meet you somewhere out there on the road. And we'll get off our ash together. We'll stay off, and we're going to change the world. Guys, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining us on today's podcast. We hope you found it informative and encouraging. For more information about Get Off Your Ash or to order the book, you can visit www.getoffyourash.today or just search it out on Amazon.